Hi, Carl Valeri with Aviation Careers Podcast, and welcome to another video here on our YouTube channel. We talked to George Harper at Punta Gorda Airport about what it's like to be an air traffic control manager. Also, we talked about all the different careers on the podcast. There's a link below in this video that can link to the actual episode. It's about an hour-long episode, but part of that episode, he gives an illustration as to what it's like to actually be an air traffic control manager and gives us an actual illustration of a flight and a few flights and what happens when there's actually an emergency situation. So let's go check out that illustration, and don't forget to subscribe and also click on the bell if you want to see more videos like this. So let's go talk to George Harper. What are the special skills you need, and do you have examples like we're going to talk about?
Well, I do. I apologize for some rather crude artwork, but I wanted to give someone at least a basic visual representation. And the first slide that we have kind of gives an idea on what we're looking at. In the middle of it, what you're seeing is a gross depiction of the Punta Gorda Airport with 3 runways. The dotted lines you see is our class Delta. Most towers have 5 miles and up to 2,500 feet of airspace. So that's the main area that we're going to be focused on. Now, we get aircraft outside that area checking in, and that's always beneficial because we can start setting the sequence and determining. And when you talk about math, if you guys look at slide 1, right at the top middle, I've got November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a Cessna 172, and that little number under the black dot is 085, 85 knots. So if he were to check in to land, and let's say we're landing runway 22, the top right runway, and then ExecJet 312 calls a citation jet doing 190 knots on about an 8-mile final, and he's almost straight in. So your basic math and spatial relation skills come in where you have to make that decision. Who's number one? The Cessna might have called me first, and in air traffic, we do our very utmost, first come, first serve. But at the same time, if he's doing 85 knots, by the time he travels 2 or 3 miles, that jet's going to be passing him before he gets to the runway, as you can see just by the speed. I mean, he's doing a little more than twice the airspeed, but yet he's not 2 times farther from the airport. So, when you get your airplanes that you're talking to, you have to make that decision. And I had mentioned to you, Carl, before, I'd made a talk with a high school group, and they were like, man, your job's pretty easy. And I was like, I agree. That's why I like it. Easy jobs are good. It's nothing bad. And then I showed them slide 2, which is a little more accurate representation of what we would face as controllers on a regular basis. Now, you still see that same Cessna 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 we talked about on the top, and that same ExecJet on final, but what you also see is about 8 other airplanes. And that would be a more accurate representation of the problems we would solve during an average session. We would have a conglomeration of folks all inbound that all want to land. And what you're not seeing in this representation is the 2, 3, 4 guys that are lined up on the runway that want to depart. So you have to look at the situation, the different airplanes, their positions, their airspeed, and decide who's number one, who's number 2. And, we had talked earlier, Carl, about that dirty car. Slide 2 is a dirty car. This is the beginning of the scenario where you've got everything coming at you from different angles, and you have to decide who's number 1, who's number 2. So what you end up doing is slow one guy down, speed one guy up, give one guy a turn to follow the next guy, point them out to each other, let the pilots see each other so they can follow each other. And then as this resolves, which I should have written up, but I didn't write the resolve up, you end up with kind of like ducks in a row, airplanes all filed in a single file line, in a big loop, all working into the runway. And it's kind of like, an orchestra,
Artwork.
Yeah, it very much is. It very much is. And, to be able to see that come from this, second slide, that's a mess, and see it form into perfect organization where everything's sequenced, everyone see each other, everyone gets to come in and land. I get people like, say, the Cessna, that called me first, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he doesn't understand why he's number 3 following that Allegiant doing 210 knots that's on the top of the screen. And as air traffic controllers, we want everyone, we treat every pilot, every airplane almost like a hot potato. If you want to land, there is nothing more than we want to have you safely on the ground and off the runway and in the hangars. If you want to depart, we want nothing more than to get you airborne and clear of our airspace and on your way to wherever destination you want to go to. And the reasoning is, let's look at slide 3. We mentioned my job is easy, right? Well, it looks a little more complicated on slide 2. If you look at slide 3, more incredibly creative artwork. That guy circled in red, he's now got an emergency. He's got smoke in the cockpit. He's got limited visibility, limited equipment, and is definitely in jeopardy. We still have that dirty car out there that we had mentioned, as you can see. So now my easy job just got less easy. And this is where it makes the difference between people that are cut out for air traffic control and people that want to do it, but it isn't for them. And, no one wants to handle an emergency situation, but as air traffic controllers, this is where we get to shine, where we get to take this November 6-5 X-ray Tango I'm showing you, RV8, make him number one. Let him worry about nothing other than what he has to do to safely get that aircraft on the ground. All that other stuff you see there, that's my job. I get that out of their way. Before he's even close to the field, I've got crash fire rescue standing by, I've got equipment personnel on hand, whatever I can do to support that aircraft and make his job easier, less complicated, that's what we do. And, that's what we enjoy as air traffic controllers more than anything is providing safety of flight. In the old days, the air traffic controllers told you what to do, and as a pilot, you're expected to do it because we were trying to save your life. And it's evolved over time, and now, especially my perspective of air traffic control, is we're in a customer service business. That's the way I view it. The pilots, the people flying, you guys are our customers, and what you want is what I want to provide, a service to you to keep you safe. This depiction here where you've got that one guy almost in the middle of the mess that probably should be he might have been able to get in number one with his airspeed if he made a short approach, but depending on his configuration and what you're not seeing there is an altitude, let's say he came in at 3,000 feet, he might not be low enough to be able to get in, close in front of that jet. But more likely in this scenario, he would have been number 4 following that Cessna that we had talked about in the very first slide. But if he had an emergency, well, now he just became number 1. And everyone else has to do something different to follow him. And all those decisions have to be made. And whether, that outcome is, perfect or less than perfect, as an air traffic controller, I'm still responsible for all those other dots out there. So where you might have an hour or 2 during the day, or 3 if it's a really bad weather day in a VFR tower where you might not have much traffic, when you have a scenario like this develop, it levels the playing field, so you have, like every other job in the world, good days, bad days, easy jobs, hard jobs. This particular scenario right here would qualify as difficult for sure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that short video about what it's like to be an air traffic control manager, and that illustration in that example of, how simple it can be at first, and then there's an emergency and it gets really complex. Well, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, also subscribe, and click on the bell below. If you want to listen to the whole episode at Aviation Careers Podcast, we have a link below to that episode with George Harper there from Punta Gorda Tower. Really interesting job, fascinating illustration there as to what he does as an air traffic control manager. And also, we have that pilot interview course, so don't forget we're putting out a video every week about, and there's one question we pick out from the pilot interview course, and we share it with you, only 5 to 7 minutes. It's also good, say you're preparing for like an instrument check ride, that type of thing. We do go into a lot of different discussions about instrument check rides, etc. Anyway, we'll talk to you next episode. Safe flying, and don't forget to do something today to move forward in your career.